And this guy, you know, it says Arthur MacArthur right on it. And so the guy sent it to Douglas MacArthur. I think this is your dad's, you know. So that's how we find out a lot of these things. But this is wrapped in Mylar, something that we can keep working with over time. So Filipinos had stationed themselves around. The Americans are here. You've got McKinley waffling the whole time. He doesn't really know what he wants to do with the Philippines, and because they've made the Teller Amendment in Cuba where they're not going to seize territory. Whereas in the Philippines, they say, well, if we don't seize that, then someone else is going to come seize it. We need that to, you know, do we keep a station there to use as this commercial interest? And but you've got this anti-imperialist as well as this imperialist bent going on in the United States, fighting over who's going to really take control. It all comes down to February. Now this is a really neat piece. I found it in an envelope. It was all squashed up. It was in about 15 different pieces. You can see I've had to tape it all back together. But what this is in January of 1899, Aguinaldo was, you know, the Americans are not here to help us. They are not looking out after our interests. They had moved up to Malolos and set up their capital there. But this was plastered on the walls of Intramuros, you know, at like 2 in the morning one night, basically stating that. And this came from a veteran of the 20th Kansas who had ripped it off the walls of Intramuros that night. And basically he wrote on the bottom of it, proclamation by President Aguinaldo, this will probably lead to war. And you know, I mean, very important document, you know, here. And which it did, because in February out here, right at Santa Mesa, it points right at the Nebraska camp. That's where it starts out, where they killed the first 2 Filipinos that tried to cross it on the lines. It all explodes after that. These are the guys who will be running the campaigns. As you can see here, these are all original newspapers from 1899. And you can basically cover the entire campaigns of the Philippine American War through these. Of course, they're all American jingoist bent. The Manila Times, all these papers, they're all run by Americans there in the Philippines. So it's pretty much that story. But through all the other works, you can get the whole feeling of what actually was going on. None of these people trusted the Filipinos to be able to take care of themselves. They all said that America has to come in here and control this place for who knows how long. And basically when the war starts, then you've got this group of guys who've all been in the Civil War and seen all that. They all eradicated the Indians. You know, they've seen all that. And so all of a sudden you put them into this foreign land, which they've never been in, and this war sees atrocities like through the roof. 100,000 Filipinos, you know, is a modest estimate, or how many are killed in this war. Because they aren't prepared. It's not like a regular standing army, and they get wiped out every time they try to make a stand, all the way up through April, until finally Aguinaldo goes in hiding and they decide to just go into guerrilla war. Now this is where it becomes really bad, because now you've got some of these American commanders like Samuel Young up in the north saying, let's concentrate all the villagers into one area so they can't support the guerrillas. Well, that's the same thing they went over war with Cuba over, because that's what the Spanish were doing down there, you know? And so then now you've totally flipped your whole concentration. Otis as well is a very inept commander. Arthur MacArthur will say he is like an upside down train, just running at full speed. Because he's got people marching all over the Philippines and not really getting anything done. And he's always telling back home, kind of like Westmoreland in Vietnam, this thing's almost over. You know, we're going to have this war ended pretty quick, gilding the lily, making it look better than it really is. Lots of diaries. This is Private Howard's diary for the whole way up through the north, all his correspondence. Now the main thing that the United States, even before the commissions start coming in to try to figure out what they're going to do with the Philippines, the Army has decided the best way to start getting the Filipinos involved with a new sense of nationality is to start creating these town councils. Let's get them in the smallest forms of government that we can, make that as American as possible. Basically, it's let's make them a bunch of Americans over here. And so that's what this is all about. It's all of them are staffed with Filipinos. Your police forces, your constabulary. This is the vegan town council up in the north, and this is about 1899, 1900. And so while they're going through and trying to forcefully eradicate everything with the most forceful methods possible, they're also bringing in health reforms. They're eradicating cholera, typhus, they're bringing in educators. They're going into these towns trying to set up all these different various municipality governments to get them geared up into this idea of self, because the Spanish should run everything. The Catholic Church should run everything. And basically, you've got these two sides. Now, while you've got the civilian commissioners coming in, you've got William Howard Taft, who will come in about mid-1900, and you had the first commission under this guy named Sherman, and he basically was saying, no, these Filipinos will never be able to run themselves. They're just a bunch of savages. Whereas you had Arthur MacArthur and other people, no, these people are lawyers, doctors, these people are educators. You have this one class that's very much educated and can very well probably run a country, but you have all these masses that don't know anything about anything really. Rice farmers, basically everybody's the peasants. Just the way the country had run, it was basically still a feudal state, at that point. So the Americans are coming in. Now finally McKinley believes that the Americans have to stay because he's had a dream that God told him that the Americans had to stay. It's probably I guess he believed it. But the thing is you had all these American companies that don't want to get in the Philippines because that's going to be cheap labor that will then force out their company. Same thing today we have going on with China, and all these other places. And basically what happened was in the Americans move in, they don't let the Americans take over a lot of land. You can only own a small piece. That will still be run by the Filipino oligarchs. Basically, when Aguinaldo is running his revolution at this time, a lot of the ilustrados, like the Rizal, educated, rich, they're now going with the Americans because they want to hold on to their stuff, like they had under the Spanish. And it'll be the same thing when the Japanese come in. How do we hold on to this power that we have? So Americans are coming in, and I heard Jeff talking about it, with this idea of this democratic government, but over there you've got a lot of these kinship, means more than any kind of, civic duty, whatsoever. So you've got a lot of problems, in trying to instill an American idea somewhere else. Something that seems we still have a hard time figuring out. Now, everything kind of comes to sort of the end when this guy, Frederick Funston, you probably heard of, this guy was, he's a Yale guy who the war starts in Cuba. And it's like, I want to go fight down there, even though he's never had any training in fighting whatsoever. So he goes to the library and learns everything he can about artillery, cannons, and goes down to Cuba and fights with the rebels down there. Then he gets over to the Philippines and becomes like the top commander. But his thing isn't, I'm not here to instill American principles. I'm here to wipe out the Catholics. He's an anti-papist. He's burning every church he can find, as soon as he gets over there. But he's also a daring guy. And he comes up with this idea, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out where Aguinaldo's hiding, and then I'm just going to land up there and I'm going to just go capture him. And so he has the USS Vicksburg take him up to the east coast of Luzon, and he hikes about 100 miles in with these Maccabee scouts who are from Pampanga, but they're very much an isolated group who were really Spanish mercenaries. Fought for them, now they fight for the Americans. And he and this group go into Aguinaldo's camp and capture him. And then they bring him to Arthur MacArthur, who's like, lets him go. Because, he wants to show that the Americans are not there to, destroy the people, that they're there to basically help them along. And that's what happens with a lot of these guys. Luna, Calles, they all surrender, but whereas Taft, and the American Commission, people there who are there, we're going to control. They want to execute, these people. And after Arthur MacArthur leaves, that's what's going to start happening. These people are all just brigands. These people are all just criminals. They all need to be executed. Once Aguinaldo surrenders, pretty much the others will fall after that. Now Taft believes that the fighting in the Philippines is over. You've got about 3 or 4 more years of it, especially when you get down into Mindanao and Jolo, Sulu. Yes, sir.
So how long did the Philippine American War last?
Well, that goes from about 1899 to about 1902. Because you see, after Arthur MacArthur leaves, that's when September of 01, that's when you had Balangiga. And you had sent this troop of Americans there, and they got wiped out, massacred by Filipinos. Duped them into this celebration of McKinley, and then Well, now you've got Adna Chaffee, who's running the military in the Philippines, and he tasked Jacob Smith, who then tasked Littleton Waller to go into Samar and just kill everyone. And they do. Men, women, children,
Wow.
And it's like the guy, the people who went to Samar afterwards said, this is the most peaceful place in the Philippines. Why? Because they killed everybody. And they do the same thing in Batangas, right after that, because you've got your last holdout, Malva, down there, and they send in the troops down there, and Taft has now, it's free realm.
It's like My Lai.
It's like end it. Yeah. And it's like My Lai all over the place. And it's not an organized policy, but that's what I'm saying. These people had all been involved with the Civil War, the Indian Wars, and they're just like, well, I know how to end this, and so it's not policy, but it's gonna be over.
Prior to that, were there recruiting laborers anywhere from the Philippines?
Not a lot of them, because that was one of the big problems the Spanish had made when they would force a lot of the Filipinos to work on these giant labor projects. So the Americans were trying to shy away from that. It's really crazy, because it is this great merciless war that's going on, but his impetus is bring happiness to the Filipinos. But that's in the sense of, these municipal governments, these health initiatives, the Thomasites, the 1901, America does this whole recruiting where they bring thousands of teachers over. These are the diaries of one of the Thomasite teachers that come over there. And that's what, people in certain areas, that's all they remember is, this whole village was wiped out. Whereas all these other places, I remember the teachers that came. So it's this whole dichotomy of this weird mix, that's going on. Now, Taft doesn't really like Filipinos, but he believes this is what I have to do. I have to build this nation up, not for independence, but to be like the warehouses, the workers, for things going on back in the United States. They don't allow these big conglomerates to come in and take, like Goodrich and Goodyear. They want to come create these huge banana things down there, but they will. We only need coconut, like World War I. We need coconut oil for ammunition. We need copra. We need hemp. And so they build these certain few industries that make the oligarchs, again, as rich as possible, but it's not filtering down. And then when World War I ends, that market goes flat and the Philippines go in, massive depression. Mainly because this guy, Taft, his guy who comes after him, William Cameron Forbes, he's the guy who brings in Burnham, that builds all those buildings downtown, builds Baguio to be this American park and whatnot. But they do believe they are helping the Filipinos, But really, it's setting them up for the whims of American economy.
You got a question here?
Yes.
I'd like to go back to Aguinaldo.
Sure.
Okay. Just to set the record straight,
as far as they were revolting against Spain.
Right.
And then when they saw the American ships out there, along with the German ships and the English ships and whoever else wanted to take over the Philippines, they saw America as brothers.
Yes.
Because they fought their independence against England, so they thought, oh God, they're just like us. For many of us, we consider that a big double cross.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying. Yeah.
It was a big double cross. And the whole thing about the president, when he said that he wanted to, part of his thing, he wanted to civilize the Filipinos, so we were swinging on trees by our tails. That's what a lot of people thought. There was a song called, "Oh, the monkeys have no tails in Zamboanga." They were us.
Mm.
And so I think a lot of you should really understand that the whole climate, there was a whole climate of picturing us as less than them.
Well, that's
Yeah.
they were
And
trying to just
that's
so the
right.
people back in
And
Washington
that's why-
wouldn't give them the independence.
And the World's
Yeah.
Fairs that they set up, St. Louis and all the others, they put, it was a cultural zoo. They portrayed Filipinos as less than, even though when they had the Igorots there half naked, or so they thought, because this was during the days when people were dressed up to their ears, in clothes, women especially. They were portraying the clothes that they wear in their country, and not even saying that they had built one of the 7 wonders of the world, which are the rice terraces, which is an engineering feat. It was really so part of, our relationship with America at that time was really kind of iffy. And I don't know if you told them, because I came in a little late, but there were hundreds of thousands of people killed during that war.
That's
And
all I've
what
been
was wrong was-
concentrating on.
Yeah, right. I mean, we have pictures of people piled up, dead, and their only crime was they were Filipinos in their own country. And so I think as teachers, you should really remember that. What was happening to our country that was based on democracy and equality and whatever? What was happening? What is happening now? Anyway, so I just thought maybe I'd stick that in.
Don't come late next time.
Yeah, right.
For everybody, this is Dorothy. She's going to be doing your classes with you after lunch.
Right.
So, Dorothy Kubola.
I just wanted to ask, as someone from, I know there was a Jones initiative that was.
Yeah, we're getting right to that.
Okay,
Yeah.
because he's from Norfolk.
Right, yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. These governor generals come in there, high commissioners, and their whole deal is